The sleeping giant has woken up. If you asked football fans a few months ago which team was most likely to win the 2026 World Cup, you'd probably hear the same names over and over again. France, Argentina, Spain, maybe even England. Brazil would always be mentioned, of course, but almost as an obligation. After all, it's Brazil. They have 5 World Cups, a legendary football history, and some of the most talented players on the planet. But for the first time in years, they weren't entering the tournament as the team everyone feared the most. That has changed. As this World Cup has unfolded, something unexpected has happened. Brazil hasn't just been winning matches. They've been sending a message. A message that says this isn't the same team that fell apart under pressure in previous tournaments. This isn't the Brazil that dazzled for 20 minutes before losing control of the game. And this definitely isn't the Brazil that relied on individual brilliance to solve every problem. Instead, the rest of the football world is starting to realize something that wasn't obvious before the tournament began. Brazil may have quietly become the most complete team in international football. They're organized, disciplined, unpredictable, and perhaps most importantly, they're peaking at exactly the right time. That's why teams aren't just respecting Brazil anymore. They're hoping they don't have to play them. To understand why, we need to go back several years. Because despite producing world-class players almost every generation, Brazil has spent the last 2 decades living with a strange contradiction. They were always one of the most talented teams in every tournament, yet they repeatedly found ways to go home earlier than expected. Think about the heartbreaks they've endured. In 2006, a squad filled with legends, including Ronaldinho, Kaká, Ronaldo, and Adriano, was considered almost unbeatable. Many believed that team would dominate the tournament. Instead, they were knocked out by France in the quarterfinals. 4 years later, another talented squad arrived in South Africa, with huge expectations. Once again, Brazil looked capable of lifting the trophy. Once again, they were eliminated in the quarterfinals. Then came 2014. Hosting the World Cup on home soil was supposed to be the perfect opportunity to reclaim football's biggest prize. The entire nation believed destiny was finally on their side. What happened instead became one of the most shocking moments in football history. Germany didn't just beat Brazil, they humiliated them 7-1 in front of millions of devastated Brazilian fans. That defeat didn't simply end the tournament. It shattered the image of Brazilian football itself. Many believed Brazil would never fully recover. To their credit, they did recover faster than most people expected. They rebuilt their squad, developed exciting young players, and once again became one of the strongest teams in South America. Yet every World Cup seemed to end the same way. In 2018, Belgium exposed their defensive weaknesses and sent them home. In 2022, Croatia survived wave after wave of Brazilian attacks before eliminating them on penalties. It wasn't a lack of talent that cost Brazil. If anything, they probably had more individual quality than almost every team they faced. The real problem was balance. Brazil always looked capable of scoring 3 goals against anyone, but they also looked capable of conceding 2. They played beautiful football, but beautiful football doesn't always win tournaments. World Cups are different. They reward discipline. They reward patience. They reward teams that know exactly when to attack and exactly when to stay compact. For years, Brazil had mastered only half of that equation. The football itself was breathtaking. The results weren't. That realization forced Brazilian football to ask a difficult question. What if the problem wasn't the players? What if the problem was how those players were being managed? The answer came in the form of one of football's greatest coaches. When Carlo Ancelotti accepted the challenge of leading Brazil, reactions were mixed. Some people loved the idea. Others wondered whether a European manager could truly understand Brazilian football. After all, Brazil had always prided itself on its unique identity. The samba style, the flair, the creativity. Hiring a foreign coach almost felt like admitting something had gone wrong. But that's exactly why the decision was so important. Brazil didn't need another coach who would encourage beautiful football. They already knew how to play beautiful football. They needed someone who knew how to win. And few managers in football history understand winning better than Carlo Ancelotti. Throughout his career, Ancelotti has managed dressing rooms filled with superstars. AC Milan, Chelsea, Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid. Everywhere he went, he proved the same thing. Great players don't need constant tactical lectures. They need structure. They need confidence. And they need a manager who knows how to bring every piece together. That's precisely what Brazil had been missing. Instead of asking every player to become the hero, Ancelotti built a system where everyone had a clear role. Suddenly, Brazil looked calmer in possession. Their midfield stopped leaving massive gaps behind them. Their defenders weren't constantly exposed to dangerous counterattacks. Their attacks became more patient, more calculated, and somehow even more dangerous. Ironically, Brazil became more Brazilian by trying less desperately to play Brazilian football. The freedom was still there. The flair was still there, but now it existed inside a disciplined structure. That combination is what makes this team so frightening. Because when a nation already blessed with extraordinary talent finally discovers tactical balance, the ceiling becomes incredibly high. And that's exactly what the rest of the football world is beginning to notice. For years, opponents believed that if they could survive Brazil's first wave of attacks, opportunities would eventually appear. Brazil would overcommit. Spaces would open. Counterattacks would become possible. Today, those spaces are disappearing. And if that trend continues, Brazil may have solved the very weakness that prevented them from lifting the World Cup for more than 2 decades. The scary part? We've only talked about the system. We haven't even looked at the players yet. Why this Brazil team is different. Of course, having a world-class coach means nothing if you don't have the players to execute the plan. Fortunately for Ancelotti, Brazil isn't just talented. They're overflowing with talent. The difference is that, unlike previous generations, these players are no longer trying to prove they're superstars individually. They're beginning to look like a team that understands something every World Cup winner eventually learns. The trophy doesn't go to the team with the best highlights. It goes to the team that makes the fewest mistakes. The perfect example of that transformation is Vinicius Jr. A few years ago, Vinicius was known as one of the most exciting dribblers in football. Defenders hated facing him because of his speed, but critics often questioned his decision-making in the final third. Today, those criticisms have almost disappeared. He's no longer just an entertainer. He's become one of the most complete attacking players in the world. His pace is still devastating, but what makes him truly dangerous now is his maturity. He knows when to accelerate, when to slow the game down, when to attack the space behind the defense, and when to create opportunities for teammates instead of forcing impossible shots. That evolution changes everything for Brazil. Opponents can no longer assume they'll simply double mark him and survive. If 2 defenders rush toward Vinicius, someone else is suddenly free. And that's where Brazil becomes terrifying. Because while everyone is watching Vinicius, Rodrigo quietly destroys defensive structures. Rodrigo may not receive the same headlines, but ask almost any elite defender which type of forward is harder to contain, and many will tell you it's the intelligent one. Rodrigo rarely wastes movement. He drifts into spaces defenders don't notice until it's too late. He combines quickly, presses relentlessly, and has an incredible ability to appear exactly where the ball is about to arrive. He isn't the loudest player on the pitch, but that's precisely what makes him so dangerous. The best defenders can prepare for explosive dribblers. It's much harder to prepare for someone who constantly disappears before suddenly reappearing inside the penalty area. Then there's Endrick. Every Brazilian generation seems to produce one teenager carrying impossible expectations. Pelé had them. Ronaldo had them. Neymar had them. Now it's Endrick's turn. The remarkable thing isn't simply his technical ability. It's his mentality. Most young players hesitate on football's biggest stage. Endrick attacks it. He plays with the confidence of someone who genuinely believes every defender in front of him can be beaten. That fearlessness injects an unpredictable energy into Brazil's attack because opponents never know whether he'll attempt something brilliant or something completely unexpected. As if that weren't enough, another name has started forcing football fans around the world to pay attention: Rin. Before this tournament,